So I'll be taking apart my mining tower that consists of a mix of different 3080s, 3070 Ti's, and 3060 Ti's, and I will be moving it into this 8 to 12 rig mining frame that I paid about $100 for. We have the motherboard screws, and these are just typical PC screws, I guess. This is to hold the frame together. So this does not come with any instructions, but it is very easy and kind of self-explanatory to set up. It does not take too long. You kind of just put the pieces together. And once you mount your motherboard, that's where you have to actually have your motherboard available so you can see which screws are needed for your specific motherboard. Don't over tighten anything. Usually that's when you start having issues. I actually shouldn't even be using this. I should be using one of these, but I'm trying to speed up the process. That way I can start moving my mining rig here. Just go around, make sure everything is tightened up. Just enough where everything is sturdy. I will be moving this upstairs into the mining room, so just want to make sure everything is snug. That's pretty much it, sturdy. Now, obviously this part right here, this is where the cards are gonna sit. Some of these mining frames actually bring different, it brings this. It's like a foam pad, which I obviously will be putting. It does help when your risers are sitting on there, and especially if some of your risers don't have that foam at the bottom. You don't want to have direct contact with metal with any of the components on the riser, just so nothing shorts. Okay, so that's the mining rig frame. These are for your power supplies. You put this on here, and then you can attach a power supply through them. It's not difficult to put in. Same thing with this one. I'll put these to the side, and I'm gonna finish off the rig, the mining frame, with this foam strip. There we go. And that's it. This is just a power button for your motherboard. I do have one. I might not even use this. I don't think there's a place for it. At least I don't see anything. Maybe I cut a hole out and have it sit somewhere. But for now, this is the mining frame. Let's move on to the next part. I am gonna be taking apart that mining tower and start bringing the cards down so I can start building it back up. So this is what the current setup looks like for those mixed graphic cards. This tower worked great over the summer, but is very inefficient during the winter, especially since I'm changing up the mining room to a different layout. I will not be needing this any longer. The first thing we do is turn off the motherboard, then unplug the power supplies, and then we start taking everything apart. This is the motherboard once I've taken it off. Next, we're gonna unplug the USB cables from the risers. So I've taken apart the mining tower and I'm gonna put all of these components into that mining frame. We have 8 GPUs, I believe 3 3080s, a 3080 Ti, 3070 Ti, 3060 Ti, and a 1080 Ti. We're gonna be fitting all of that using these risers. We have all of the cables, the USB cables. The motherboard we're gonna be using is the H110 Pro BTC. And we're also gonna be using this to power the risers. I'll show you guys in the video how I'm gonna be powering them the correct way. And we do have the SSD that has HiveOS already pre-installed with two 1300 G2 power supplies. That should be enough to power everything. Let's get started by mounting the motherboard first, along with the SSD and the power supplies. So normally I like to place the motherboard first where it should go and where I should be putting these motherboard riser screws. So we have a problem. This is supposed to be actually upside down. You see this lip here? It's supposed to be going down, and I have to flip this bottom part up now actually. So I flipped it the way it's supposed to. Now this is smooth and everything should be able to fit now the proper way. Let's mount the motherboard screws first, the mounting motherboard screws. So the motherboard is in. I've used every single screw hole that's available. You want to make sure that it's secure and that it's not loose, especially because you're going to be plugging things into it and you don't want to damage anything. So this mining rig comes with a SSD mount. So all you have to do is put the screws in, run everything to the motherboard. Right now we're going to test and make sure that the motherboard boots at least into the BIOS or into HiveOS even with no cards, just to make sure that everything is working before we start plugging everything in and run into an issue, and then we have to come back and take everything apart. So let's test the motherboard first, make sure it posts, and then we can start mounting each individual graphics card. With this bracket that I've just installed, this holds the power supply. That's definitely not going anywhere. I decided to have the fan pushing up because it did have a slit in the middle, like a square slit, but I don't see how air can be pulled from in there if this is flat to the ground. So I just felt more comfortable having this pushed up. So we have the HDMI cable plugged in. We have the power supply all plugged in. The SSD is all set up. We have the CPU cable that goes here, and then the motherboard cable. I am using the splitter. This pretty much what it does is once the motherboard turns on, it turns on both power supplies. Because if you don't do that, the second power supply won't be turning on unless you have the smaller adapter, which is pretty much this without that cable. That's gonna jump the power supply to turn on once you hit the power switch. But this way I can just control both power supplies turning on and off using one splitter instead of having to manually turn both of them on and off using the switch. Since we have everything plugged in, let's power the mining rig. Everything should turn on. We're gonna see if it posts on the monitor. It has posted. HiveOS has started to boot, and we can start cable managing everything. You don't want these cables being on the way. It's always good practice to make sure everything's tucked away pretty cleanly. Let me do that now, and I'm going to show you guys how it looks like after. So I've tried to keep this as clean as I can. I am using zip ties to keep everything nice and tucked down to the base of the rig. So we have both power supplies secured to the bottom of the rig with zip ties. We have a SATA cable that's giving power to the SSD, and we have a Molex cable that's giving power to these pins on the motherboard for the PCIe connectors. And what else do we have? The CPU cable, the SATA cable. It's all organized. Everything is zip tied. This is just pretty much the basic mining frame with motherboard setup. This turns on, it goes into HiveOS, so we're good on that. The next step, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm just gonna lay out all the risers and power the risers first. cable manage them so they're not a mess. And then I'm gonna start mounting each graphics card and then running the VGA 8-pin cables to the top of the graphic cards. So the way I'm gonna be powering the risers will be like this. I have a 8-pin to dual 6 plus 2 8-pin connectors. This cable, the whole cable, can pull up to 288 watts max. Now, if we do some quick math, a riser can pull up to 75 watts. So you can run 3 risers with one 8-pin cable, because even though you split this, right, you split this into 2 cables, the whole cable is 288. But when you split this, it splits that in half. So if we split this one right here with the splitter, we can power 3 risers. So one cable will power 3 risers. I did the math, everything should work. I'm gonna be doing some testing. Again, I have not powered it like this. I don't see why it wouldn't work. All of the math is there, 288 max power draw. This is not equal to that when you multiply 75 watts times 3. And on top of that, they won't pull 75 watts. They can pull up to 75 watts. So you have to account for that. That's why I'm not using any of the SATA cables that usually come with these risers. Those are garbage. Never use SATA to power your risers. You either use a 6-pin or you can use the splitters how I'm showing right now, which I will be testing now. And if you guys have any comments on this, there's always a debate on whether or not it can be set up like this. So you guys let me know in the comments what you guys think and how I should power them if you guys think I'm doing it wrong. So we have the 3 risers plugged in with the 6-pin cables. And now I'm gonna just put some cards down, start tying it in place, so that way I know where to zip tie these at the right spacing. And then I'm gonna take the cards out and kind of secure these in more of a permanent solution. So since I know what each card pulls as far as power, I made a quick, more or less cheat sheet. This is a simplified version of how everything's being powered. So I actually created a diagram on draw.io explaining more or less what the power distribution is for the risers. I will be linking that video on the top right of this one. So you guys should definitely go check it out, just so you guys know how to properly power your risers. So what I did here was I just measured out the spacing for each card. Everything has enough room for there to be good airflow and not overheat each other. That way I can set up the proper spacing for each riser, and that way I can zip tie everything and make it nice and clean. I'm gonna start taking these out and start zip tying everything where it belongs, since these have already been powered. Get everything to the bottom of this right here. Everything is zip tied. I have a bunch of zip ties, so I might as well use them. And all of these 4 risers are fully powered, cable managed. And the next step would be to start cable managing the USB adapters that will be plugged in down here. So we have the right, I have to move some cards around because I didn't realize that the 3070 Ti is unfortunately a 3 8-pin connector, which means I needed 2 of the 8-pin cables. So I couldn't fit that into this power supply and power the risers as well with the 8-pin connectors. So now we have half the rig running with one of the power supplies. I've tried to keep it as clean as I could. That's what it looks like on this side. All of the 8-pin cables are going through here. Everything is pretty much tied to the bottom. Let's go to the other side. Same thing here. Everything is wired up as clean as possible. It booted. I got the Hive OS notification saying that Worker 2 has come online. So now, once we finish setting this up, we're gonna go into our computer and start doing some overclocking for this rig. So we have all of the cards running stable. They've been up for about an hour. We're gonna move this back into the mining room. Everything is pretty much snug and tucked away. We can fit up 5 more cards in this BTC H110 mining motherboard. For now, obviously, we cannot squeeze anything else in there without compromising some of the airflow and rising some of the temperatures. So maybe what I would do is have another one of these on the right side, and then kind of have another frame that's gonna share those 5 slots with the other 5 slots, and kind of have 3 rigs with 2 motherboards and I would say 6 power supplies. I'm gonna be adding that very soon, so stay tuned for the next video or the next few videos where I will be doing something very similar to that. But this is pretty much what the 8 GPU mining rig looks like. So I did forget to mention that I will be using these RGB up here fans. I believe they're from up here. I'll be using these temporarily until I get my 200 CFM fans that I'm normally using on my other rigs. This is just to keep it more cool. I am now gonna be moving it upstairs, and hopefully we don't have any thermal issues, which we shouldn't. There's enough space in between each card. But yeah. So I've moved the miner back up to the mining room. Everything is plugged in and running. Those LED fans really suck for pushing air. These are temporary. The 200 CFM ones should be coming in soon, like I said before. And this is more or less what the layout of the mining room looks like. I will be updating the overall layout and have a big shelf in the middle that's gonna have all of these miners stacked up on top of each other, and all of the hot air is gonna be sucked out of the window. Well, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. That is how I built this 8 GPU mining rig. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.